Okay, let's do wood.
First.
Let's do wood first. Let's make this a wooden box, and then maybe I'll make this, and then we'll see how this will transform into metal. So wood, you can cheat with wood by putting in wood grain. It's really important to study actual pictures of wood. So there's wood with tight grain, really tight grain. Some of it you can see the grain loop back. So I'm going to just go by memory, but I highly suggest having a photo of a piece of wood that you're trying to do. So I'm just going to take a 5 and draw some grain on here. It's not going to really show too much on this side. Now on the top, I'm going to use a lighter tone. And mostly just streaks. Just putting streaks because there's a lot of streakiness in wood grain. And again, you use photo references to look at that. This thing could almost be done in marker. So why use pastel? I believe pastel is used for a larger area, and it also can be used to integrate the background, to incorporate a background element, which I'm going to do right now. So with 2 sticks, maybe 3 sticks, I'm going to powder these. And I'm using these tones just because they kind of have wood. I don't know if wood really has yellow, but it's to lighten up some of the tones. So to powder that, I wouldn't use the sharp edge of the blade, probably the dull part of the blade. If you use the sharp part of the blade, you can probably get chunks. So I'm just going to scrape a powder, maybe half a teaspoon, I don't know how much, but get enough there so you can play with it. That's almost like a half teaspoon, I don't know. And then I'm going to put an orange next to it. Sometimes it will make squeaks like you're scratching on a chalkboard, so just be aware if you're kind of sensitive to little scratchy noises. This is depending. I think it depends on the blade that you're using. Now there's still some chunks in there, and so it's best to chop it up a little finer. Student body card works pretty good. Okay, and so I'm just trying to get rid of the chunkiness, and what I'm going to do now is, normally without using Bestine, I could pick up the powder by just swooping it up and applying it to the paper. But what I'm going to do, instead of just picking it up with a dry cotton, I'm going to wet it just a little bit. So I want to make sure I wet it not over my drawing area. So it's just a matter of tilting this really quickly and just getting it slightly wet. And the reason why we use Bestine is it doesn't leave a stain. So there's no guarantee if you use a different kind of solvent, like thinner or other kind of element like rubbing alcohol. I can't guarantee the results. But it's a good idea to practice what's going to look like, see what's going to happen. So another reason to use Bestine is it causes streaks. So you see the streakiness, and that lends itself to like a grainy effect. If you powder it, then you can get like a sponge technique. And then it becomes kind of like a faux painting technique that interior designers use on walls. Okay, so I'm just going to do a streak, see what happens here. And I'm going to do a loose technique. I'm just going to start from the edge of the paper and just kind of go up. Now I don't know if the streaks are going the right way. I don't think they're going the right way. But I'm just going to show you some kind of background. I'm going to remove this so you can kind of see what's going to happen here. So why do it this way? What it does is it becomes more of a relaxed looking drawing, like as if you didn't spend too much time on it. So time is very important in Rapid Viz, so if you can make the drawing look like it didn't take much time, then that's pretty good. So now I have an option. I could keep this background and then add some finishing touches to this drawing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mask And probably the best way to mask is with Post-it notes. But I'm just going to use a sheet of paper here. And I'm going to add some tone here. And let's do the same thing again. And this time I'm going to go with the grain. Post-it notes are not too sticky, which is perfect. Here. And I'll do a tight mask, so meaning it's going to be enclosing just the area that I want. Okay, I have to powder some more. And this is just a generic wood. I really don't know what kind of wood this is, but a combination of the color and drawing the wood grain will tell us that it's wood. And this dries pretty fast, so you have to cap it right away. And try not to keep it under your nose. It will have an odor, and it's nice to work with an open door or window so that you have ventilation. Now, it's really tricky with Bestine. Bestine could make a very smooth layer, but you want to try to get streaks. And if the streaks aren't happening, go ahead and draw streaks with a pencil, with a stick, and that might help get the streakiness of that. So let's try it again. And that should do it. It's going to dry lighter. So whatever tone I have there, it's going to dry a little bit. There's a little bit of overshoot, but that's okay. That could probably be erased. Now, these are almost all the same tone, so I have to make this a little bit darker. So let's try to make that this area a little bit darker here. To create contrast. Okay, so now this is the pigment straight out of the stick. How do I make it darker? I'm going to add a little bit of black, just a little bit. So let's repeat the powdering process. And because this is a wet technique, be aware that it might bleed underneath the paper. So don't have any nice drawings underneath. It might bleed to the next sheet underneath the Bestine. So the same powdering technique, only I'm going to add like a fraction of black to darken it down. And because we're working with brown, black works good. If you're working with a lighter color like yellow, you might want to use an orange or a red or a brown. Shades of yellow tend to be greenish or brownish. So let's see how this works. And because it's darker, I'm going to treat this as a paintbrush. So I'm going to use a separate paintbrush for the darker tone. So here's my other brush. In case I need to go back to that color, I have that available. So I'm going to mix this first. It's a good idea to test it. Test the tone. Yeah, it's going to be good enough. So I'm going to go this way. And it's darker. I don't know if there's streaks. I'm going to put a darker streaks inside, some streaks. And go over that again, just so I can see the streaks in there. And we'll call that done. Okay. So a slightly darker tone. There's a little bit of bleeding, which can be fixed. Okay. So this technique again is to lay down basic tones, and to refine your drawing, use pencil and pen. So that's I have my basic tones 1, 2, 3, and now I want to darken in the drawing. Let me go blue again. Let's see if I can find a black pen. This is a HB pencil might work. Try an HB pencil, it's almost black. So what I'm going to do is yeah, refine this drawing. I'm done with all the pastels, so if you're nice and tidy, you can clean all that up. I don't need to have this scratch paper anymore. I put it to the side. And now I can just concentrate on my drawing. Now if I want to be really careful, and if I know what part of my drawing I'm working on, I could cover up the other areas so I don't get too messy. So most illustrators will cover the areas that they're not working with to keep their drawing clean. Okay, so now I'm going to darken the outline of this, and I'll be a lot tighter. So I'm not going to do any overshoot. Nice heavy black line on the bottom grounds the drawing. It sits down on the page a little bit better. It makes a relationship to the ground that it's sitting on or the tabletop. And then just simply outlining it helps us see the shape of the object right away. So a strong outline will help the person looking at the drawing identify the shape very quickly. It's just a nice trick to do. You don't have to have a nice solid line. You can just accent the beginning and end points, and that'll be fine. Let's draw on the parting line. The part line is, and it shows that there's an upper part of the box and a lower part of the box. Now if I wanted to emphasize this shading here, I can actually go in more with black pencil. And I can just go in very lightly with my black pencil to really push that edge tone. One of the tricks to making a drawing read is to have high contrast between surfaces that are not in the same direction. So this surface is facing a different direction than this front surface here. So I'm just pushing that darkness, and then I'm going to add highlights. So I can accent this edge a little bit. Maybe this one, but not too much. Okay, so now I'm going to get a white pencil. And sometimes white pencil doesn't like to draw on pastels, so we're going to see if this happens or not. If it doesn't work, then use a whiteout. So instead of using a black line, on darker toned objects, the edge becomes a highlight instead of a black line. So this is a darker tone. It's not a very light toned wood. So white pencil works better instead of black, because black would be hard to see on that corner. For the parting line, I'm going to draw a white line just below the black line, show a little bit of a highlight. That's the radius of the lower part. I'm adding more emphasis near the front of the drawing. This is the front. This edge is the leading edge. It's closest to the viewer. That's needs the highest contrast. Wherever you have high contrast, that's the focal point of the drawing. So the focal point is usually the part of the drawing that's closest to the viewer. And then I'm fading it out here. Okay. And that's basically that.